Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are doing very well. For the month of April and March, I did a collective theme. I chose bear. Bears typically come out of hibernation during this time of spring, so I just thought it would be applicable, I guess. I even have a brown mug to go with the theme, brown shirt. I know. No, I know. It's actually a Christmas mug, but it's okay. So let's get into the books that I chose. The first one we're gonna look at is The Bear Ate Your Sandwich. The second one today, The Teddy Bear. And last but not least, A Story for Bear. So the first book is The Bear Ate Your Sandwich. The book was primarily made with acrylic paint and pencil. It has a more impressionistic style with flat, broad paint strokes. A lot of the characters and settings were broken down to basic geometric shapes, which is actually a lot more difficult than you think, especially when you're designing animal characters. A few colors that stood out to me in this book. There was this beautiful kind of like warm lime green. It reminded me of the color of leaves when sunlight is shining through them. I don't know, it kind of reminded me of summertime. Lastly, I really liked the color of the bear himself. It was this beautiful night black. Regardless of the light he was exposed to in his setting, he consistently holds this deep black color. This really made his character design pop out against the softer, warmer tones of his surroundings, specifically the shape of his ears and also his little bum. So I don't know, I just thought that was very cute. Going to the story, the book opens with a narrator's voice. It all started with a bear. On a warm morning, a bear stepped out of his den. Stretching and sniffing, he caught a scent in the air. This scent led him to a truck. He climbed in and, finding a stash of berries, ate all he could manage before curling up to nap. Waking from his nap, he discovered that he was no longer in his forest. Exploring this strange new forest, he climbs trees, scratches bark, and stomps through squishy mud. Many interesting smells float through this forest, but the tastiest had already been found. So, he decided to follow a leafy green smell into a park. That's when he saw it. The narrator says, your beautiful and delicious sandwich. Waiting to be sure no one saw him, he made his move. In a few slobbery bites, the sandwich is nearly gone. Suddenly, a storm of sniffing, snorting, and snuffing came from behind. The bear had been seen. In a panic, he raced out the park, down the street, and up a tall tree. Atop this tree, he spotted his own forest. It was time to go home. He hopped a boat and sailed off, dozing with the rocking of the waves. When he awoke, he was greeted with the sound of a familiar breeze. It drifted through familiar branches and guided the wings of birds and bugs he knew. He was back in his forest, safe and sound. So, that's what happened to your sandwich. The bear ate it. I saw it. I tried to save your sandwich. I was able to save this little bit of lettuce here. The bear dropped it as he ran off, but I couldn't save the rest. I'm sorry to have to tell you about your sandwich this way, but now you know. Okay, let's talk about the themes of this book. Even though our narrator has guided us the entire time, we don't actually get to meet our main character until the very end. This gave an interesting twist to what would have been a simpler plot line. Once you finish the book, it's really fun to reread it from the perspective of the dog as the narrator. Overall, I found both the bear and the dog himself very lovable, and I thought the story was fun and playful. So yeah, our second book is The Teddy Bear. The primary medium is watercolor. However, the illustrator uses a technique called hatching, which is where you use closely spaced parallel lines, which adds shading and tonal values. Looking at the palette of the book, it consistently incorporates a sort of lime green throughout the book. I don't know what's up with me and the lime greens, but I just can't get enough, I guess. Sometimes it took up entire scenes, like the landscape of the park. Other times it was more subtle, like the restaurant sign or the toys in the boy's bed. Moving on to the actual story. The story begins from the perspective of the teddy bear. He lives in a comfortable home with a cozy place to sleep, many friends, and the love of a little boy. One day, traveling with the boy and his family, they made a stop for lunch. In a moment of forgetfulness, the teddy bear is left on the seat of the diner. By the time the boy realized he was missing, the bear had been thrown in the dumpster. This place was very different from the home known to the bear. It was dark, smelly, and despite all his fur, he started to get a chill. After hours lost in the trash, the bear was suddenly pulled up. To his surprise, he met the face of a bearded man wearing a green jacket. The old man smiled, stuffed the bear into his pocket, and started walking. That night, the bear slept next to the old man, watching the stars. This same night was the boy's first night separated from his bear. Days, weeks, then months passed, and while the boy still missed his teddy bear, his sadness had lessened with time. The bear too missed his friend, but found comfort in the company of the bearded man. One spring day, the old man placed the bear down onto a park bench. Coincidentally, the boy and his family were on a walk through the very same park. Upon passing the bench, the boy instantly recognized his bear. "My bear!" he cried, as he scooped up and hugged his old friend. He ran back to his parents, showed them, and began to walk away. Suddenly, the boy heard a cry from behind. "My bear! Where is my bear?" "Is this your bear?" asked the boy. Smiling, the old man embraced the teddy bear with his rough hands. "Thank you," he said. "I don't know what I would do without him." "I know what you mean," said the boy. "I used to have one just like him." With that, the boy walked back to his parents, leaving his teddy bear in the arms of the bearded man with the green jacket. So let's talk about the themes. This book includes a theme that you don't see a lot in kids' books. I believe it accomplished this in two ways. Firstly, the old man's desire for a companion could be relatable to children's connection and dependency on their toys. Secondly, it immerses kids into a reality that's a lot different from their own. The man sleeps in the dumpster, he spends his days collecting resources from trash cans, and besides the teddy bear, he is pretty much alone. On a more critical side, at the end of the story, the boy gives the teddy bear to the old man, sympathizing and relating to the man's attachment to it. However, you don't really see character development build up to this act. The boy isn't necessarily selfish, but he isn't portrayed as generous either. For example, he gets over the loss of his bear partially through getting new toys to keep him busy. Along with this, the character of the homeless man himself is pretty murky. We know that the bear loves the old man, but we aren't really told the man's affections towards the bear. So despite the really interesting theme of homelessness, the bear's story was kind of muffled by the vagueness of the boy and the homeless man's character. And when you have vague characters, it kind of restricts the connection that your reader will have with the characters, obviously, but the story itself. Alrighty, our last book today is A Story for Bear. The first thing that stood out to me was the layering of the colors. A little story time. During one of my first art lessons, I think it was like a princess coloring book, but we were just shading the hair for Belle. I obviously chose brown, and I look over and my art teacher has a multitude of colors. Her drawing was a beautiful shade of brown with this rainbow effect. I didn't know that was possible. This book really brought back that moment where I discovered that the bounds of color shading are endless. The color palette of this book is not dull, but rather a balance of more neutral tones like browns and golds combined with warmer tones like reds and oranges. Looking at the story, one day a bear, looking through the bushes, spots a piece of paper. Curious, he brings it back to his cage and studies it with wonder. Then, on a summer afternoon, the bear comes upon something rather strange: a cabin, hanging laundry, and a woman. One day, when the woman was not in her yard, the bear inched towards the pile of squares. He put his head close. Suddenly, he heard the woman. Swinging his head around, they locked eyes. Hesitantly, the bear lumbered closer and laid down. She then opened the square and began to softly speak. He couldn't understand what she was saying, but that didn't matter. The sound of her voice filled him with happiness. Day after day, the bear returned. She read stories of sailors at sea, speaking fearfully when they were in danger, laughing when they played tricks. The leaves were now changing colors, and when he next returned to the cabin, something else was different too. The woman was nowhere to be found, but in her place, piles of books lay on a cloth. One by one, he tenderly picked up the books in his mouth, trudging along through the autumn forest back to his den. That night, laying amidst the green and red covers, he had dreams of adventure, magic, and love. And that winter, whenever he put his nose or paw to the page, the woman was there, reading to the bear. Let's talk about some of the themes of the book. I know it's common to see anthropomorphized animals in children's books. However, this book seemed to weave in and out of this theme. The bear had his human characteristics, the range of emotions, and his complex inner world, but these human characteristics were combined with more realistic limitations for animals. His inability to understand what the woman was saying, as well as his inability to read the books. This combination of human and animal characteristics made me wonder about the real life range of animal experience. I know it's cheesy, but it's kind of a nice thought to think about animals feeling happy or at peace when you read to them or just talk to them. I just thought it was kind of sweet. Additionally, this book speaks to the comfort of reading in general and how the shared love of reading can be a tool for bringing individuals together. I will say, make sure your child is aware that if approached by an actual grizzly bear, he probably doesn't want to read a book about sailors. He probably wants to eat you for sport. No hate to the bear community. We all do what we need to do. Overall, this was a very wholesome book, especially as a transitional book from summer to the fall-autumn season. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the books that I picked for these 2 months. Also, guys, big announcement. My own personal book, The Very Boring Art Museum, is days away from publication. So please be on the lookout for that. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Yeah, bye-bye.